All right, folks, welcome to the runningrestaurants.com podcast, where we're bringing the tips, tools, and techniques you need to make your restaurant more profitable and successful. I'm your host, Jaime Oikle. Today, got a great episode for you. I'm here with Bryan Solar of SpotOn. Bryan, welcome. We're going to talk about SpotOn's 2025 restaurant business report here in a bit. But before diving into that, just give me a little bit about your background in the industry and what the company does there, and we'll keep going after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in the 8 aunts, uncles, and grandparents that all had restaurants, and so
Shoot.
my dad worked in the restaurant. Paid his way through school with it, and he was adamant that he didn't want any of us to work in restaurants. He's like, I don't want you working Christmas Day. I don't want you working, all the weekends that we did. And for me, like, it's kind of in the blood. Like I think about like my family and my cousins and my aunts, and so. I've been working in restaurant tech, started at a nonprofit that did turnarounds for restaurants, started a business that got acquired by Google that helped restaurants get busy when they were slow, worked in the restaurants division at Google, and then ran the restaurants division at Square, and now I'm the CPO at SpotOn. And SpotOn, we're a little bit of a different beast in that instead of being kind of like we call them like a legacy point of sale. Our big thing is we're a belief that we want to create the ecosystem and the operating system that allows restaurants to be profitable and successful. And so it's not just about the till, it's about, labor, it's about online ordering, it's about making sure that you can understand your customers. And we've been at it since about 2019.
One of the highlights, or where it starts, is the fact that no rocket science here, right? Economic pressures are rising across the industry. What, kind of from your perspective, would you say are some of the biggest financial challenges over the past year or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is just the volatility of the inputs, right? So I talked to a person who owns a number of breakfast places, and he said, I see someone order an omelet and, my heart just sinks. Because I know the number of eggs that go into that, and God forbid they add guacamole on top of that, because now I'm thinking about the price of an avocado given all the volatility, and I think that's definitely a big part of it. The other part is there's just a bunch of different things that are happening with labor, state by state, and all of this is happening over a macroeconomic environment where like customers just aren't taking price anymore. Over the last couple of years since COVID, restaurants increased the price of that margarita or that steak, and the guests tolerated it up to a point. And now we're starting to see that they're starting to pull back on their spend. So the prices have gone up. The willingness to pay is now extremely inelastic.
First of all, I agree. We eat out a lot, just go shopping a lot. And I was at the market the other night, and I'm going, paper towels, holy crap. So, that big thing of paper towels you used to grab for $9, it was like $23. I'm like scratching my head. I'm like, what's going on? I used to get paper towels for like $9. And that's happening across all the segments, and the same thing at the restaurant. Like, oh, that used to be like $9.99, and now it's $18.99. So there's the resistance. We're obviously being more careful. Folks are being more careful. In the report, you guys, huge numbers. I'm just kind of reading from this. 99% of operators agree that strong financial management is critical, but 84% think their current system needs work. So what tools can folks use? What's missing? How can they do better?
Yeah, one of the things that we are really, really big believers of is you can manage what you can measure. And one of the big things that I think is incredibly important for restaurant owners to do, especially in times where the margin is harder to come by and the pressures are constantly volatile, is you have to have really, really great reporting. You have to understand what's happening in your business. If you're multi-location, you need to happen to know what's happening at each of those locations. And so we're seeing a lot of increased capabilities, not only internally, but also when we look at partners that we work with, in terms of diagnosing what's happening within a business and giving a lot more kind of proactive and suggestive solutions to what's happening in the books. And I think most folks have opportunity that's sitting in their business that's just hidden in the data.
Yeah, well, let's talk about data then for a second, because you can collect everything you want, every darn thing you want. There could be so much in there.
Yep.
And then I, as the restaurant owner, can log on and see a dashboard, and I just might not know what to do with it. Like, how do you guys help, or how have you seen restaurants really take some of the meaningful outputs from dashboards and screens and actually put it into implementation?
For sure. So, one of the things that I think about a lot, I had an aunt who worked, and I mean, if you told me that she worked 100 hours a week, I'd probably think that you were being conservative.
Mm.
And one of the things that I think is tricky is, as a restaurant owner, you have very real fires that you're putting out. You have very real, the chef didn't show up, we have a customer that's upset, et cetera. And so within the data, one of the things that I think is like really, really helpful is being able to access specific reports, access PMIX reports, access reports on the labor, how service is coming. We're seeing really, really cool data in terms of like kitchen display systems, like what's happening in the kitchen, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we continue to progress, one of the things that we're shipping more and more of is suggestions and kind of specific tasks that people should go and look at and try to fine tune. We're a big believer that the 3P or third party ecosystem, there's so many really, really, really strong players out there. And we're seeing a lot more folks using AI, for example,
Mm-hmm.
to do analysis of where there's opportunity. And I think the rate at which this technology is evolving, it's not just about collecting the data. We have a saying at SpotOn, which is no library cards. You can't say, hey, the answer is in there, go find it. We have to give the answer. And I think both internally and also the way that we're partnering with third parties, we're starting to push forward a lot more suggestions, because if you're working 100 hours a week, you don't have time to go and find the answer back there. You need to know, what is the thing that I need to do this week to be more successful?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And one of the things I remember reading in the report, or some of the highlights, is yes, operators want to dig more into this, but can't find the time, because like you said, we're doing 100 things a day as an operator. Have
Yep.
you talked to folks, or do you guys give, I'm sure you give seminars and webinars and talks, how to carve out, 30 minutes of your day to operate better? Like, how can they find the time? Or if they only had a few minutes, how do they best utilize it? Kind of some thoughts around that.
Yeah, one of the things that we have, so we have a restaurant advisory board. And one of the things I think is really interesting is we get to work with really, really successful, really sophisticated businesses. And I think that there's a kind of misconception out there that really successful businesses typically have 20 locations, 50 locations. There are folks that are doing extraordinarily well, and they're doing it with one location or two locations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I think is interesting is best practice that I've seen from some of our board members is they have specific reports that they effectively view the same as brushing their teeth. And every morning they're going to wake up, they're going to have their cup of coffee, they're going to do their morning routine, and they're going to look at these things within the business. And when you have that discipline at looking at those numbers over and over and over again, and the small changes start to kind of pop out,
Mm-hmm.
and it's unbelievable what the right data with some regularity and attention can do for a profit margin of a business.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. To take it like the daily news, like you would drink your cup of coffee and turn on whatever news channel of your preference. But let's go back to pricing for a second, because you already hinted at it, but folks feel a discomfort when changing prices, when increasing prices, and then there's the physicality of doing it and putting on the menu and so forth. But what have you seen around pricing strategy? How can restaurants approach that a little bit more deeper in their business? How can data play a role there? What do you think?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're starting to see is there's really good tools that are coming out that allow people to benchmark prices of specific items in areas. And I mean, even things like some ChatGPT agents. But I think the thing that I think a lot about is just people talk about increasing the AOV, the average order value. And like, obviously that's important, but the contribution margin, like the profit margin of the thing that you're adding, that matters a ton. And so I'll give you an example. If your AOV is $20 and let's say that we add a dessert on there that brings it to $25, and now you're selling a bunch of that dessert. But the profit margin on that dessert is actually only $1 because it's, very complicated to make in the kitchen. It has some expensive inputs, et cetera. Whereas if that extra is, let's say, an ice cream or a alcoholic beverage or something that's much higher margin, I think one of the things that's really, really interesting about pricing strategy is it's not just about increasing that AOV, it's about increasing your overall profit margin of the cart. And that's where I think kind of the sister that often gets overlooked with pricing strategy is cost strategy and kind of like the contribution strategy. And so those two things together, I think are things that really, really help a business be more profitable. And obviously everyone listening to this podcast knows the margins in the restaurant space are so tight that, let's say that you're doing 4% profit margin a year. If you can find a way to increase that to 5% on a relative basis, you just increase your profit margin by 25%.
Right.
That's a huge deal. So thinking about that is a big thing. And the other thing that we look at a bunch as it relates to pricing strategy is there's this death spiral that has I've seen play out with a couple of restaurants where their costs go up, their labor costs go up, and they decide that they're going to increase price to cover that delta. And then, yes, they get that kind of dopamine hit of more customers or more revenue coming in from the customers. But what they don't see is that their returning customers amount starts to decline. And that to me is the part that anyone who's doing price changes, especially asking customers to take price, it's really, really important, in my opinion, that you look at the regulars versus new ratios within your business to make sure that you're not accidentally flipping the apple cart and hurting your long term to achieve a short term goal, which ultimately really, really negatively impacts your business.
Yeah, I was jotting down a bunch of things right there. And when you were talking, I thought mostly about the example of I'm having a meal, I've had a beer, wife's had a glass of wine, and that opportunity, that little window where if you get me to get that second bottle of beer and she gets her second wine, $7 for the beer, $10 for the wine, probably 80% profit margin. And if you miss that window, you just lost $18 in cash. You just let it go. You just dropped it on the ground. And so that is an excellent opportunity. That brings my bill from, I'll just make up a number from 60 to 80. But that of that $20, 16 of it's probably dropping to the, I'm exaggerating, but a big chunk of it is dropping to the bottom line. So those opportunities are dramatic. And that comes to suggestive selling and maximizing opportunities. So yeah, you can fight costs all you want, but if you're not taking advantage of those little opportunities, you're missing a big deal.
100%. And I think one of the things that's really, really interesting is people talk about pricing strategy, but what you're talking about, which I think is arguably the bigger opportunity, is a kind of a time to value strategy. And so I have a cousin who he says that his favorite thing to do when he's walking the floor is see a half-drank margarita on a table that is empty. And what that tells him is that they got the first margarita on the table early enough that someone could drink it and be done and order the second one before their entree came. And they got it. Maybe they didn't even 100% want the second, but they got it because they were there. And the thing that I think is actually interesting about that is if you assume that, let's say a margarita is $12, they got 100% increase, $12 to $24. But from a consumer standpoint, they believe that they got more value because they're looking at that ticket and they're saying, well, I got 2 margaritas, that makes sense. Whereas I think what some people are doing out there is not increasing their speed of value or speed of service, saying, well, I'm going to make that margarita $18. And that person now feels like they got less value and they're less likely to come back, and they're less likely to come back and order 2 or 3 margaritas.
Yeah, man. Well said. this is a weird question, but like, the perfect world scenario, and tech is starting to answer some of these questions and AI is answering this question, but what are the data? What are the insights that can help make better pricing decisions? Where does that nexus kind of come from?
I mean, there's so many really interesting inputs. I'm a big believer that like there's the competitive set data, which is important, and it's sometimes hard to get. The one that I like the most is effectively looking at kind of like PMIX and impact on PMIX as people make price changes. There's different schools of thought on if dynamic pricing is going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Historically, restaurants have used a relatively blunt instrument in the form of happy hours for dynamic pricing. But I do think that that's going to be a bigger part of the equation. Especially if you're a full service restaurant and you're trying to get that second turn or third turn on the night, arguably someone who is willing to come and dine at 9:30 should get a different rate. Or if they're
Right.
willing to come at 4:30, they should get a different rate. But I think the tools that I would look at for pricing strategy are the competitive set, the repeat, the customer surveys. Those are probably the three big inputs that I would look at.
It's, what's fascinating is dynamic pricing it's starting to be a test out there in the restaurant market, but it's so common in other places, hotels and airlines specifically. And so I'm looking at a flight the other day, and it happened to be over the a holiday, over the Easter holiday, and it was $499, like $499. And I know that same flight can be as low as like $49, like $59, because it's just one of those things. And so you're like, it's the same flight, same plane, same crappy. Sometimes they're a budget airline. So I'm going to pay $499 for that same flight as $49. But the reason I might want to do it because it's a high demand opportunity and I want to get there and I want to be there. And it's the same thing with Friday night at a restaurant. I want to be there. I want to experience the energy of Friday night. And so should that be the same price as Monday? I don't know. I don't have the answer, but you see it happen in tickets. The ticket to the big game goes through the roof. The ticket to the so-so game on a Tuesday night is over here. Same seat, same ball game, same baskets, et cetera. So we'll see. I mean, I would predict that at some point it's going to be a factor. I don't think any of us want to see an LED menu. Like you walk in, it's like you said, that happy hour. You want to beat the timing. You don't want to sit there and watch the menu prices change as you're sitting there. But I don't know. Maybe that's where we're heading. And I know at some point I was going to ask you about trends, so I guess maybe we'll just kind of stay there. Any other kind of future trends you see in the next couple years coming?
Yeah, the thing that I have been most optimistic for, but I'm yet to see, is a level of personalization. And that kind of permeate through the entire experience, the hospitality experience. There was a place that I used to go to. It was a Thai restaurant. And if they had good data, they probably would have known that I was probably in their top 5% of customers. I mean, we ordered massive amounts of takeout, and every other week we would come in and we would order massive amounts of dine in. They had a bunch of, I think, employee turnover. So like maybe the person who took my order every night was different, but it always irked me that they would come and they'd say, "Have you been here before?" And I'd say, "Oh, so many times." And one of the things that we believe, and we're betting pretty heavily behind, is this concept of technology-enabled hospitality. So can we help create a profile around a guest? Can we help, if you are having turnover, know, hey, this isn't just someone off the street. This is Bryan. He's been here 27 times. He always orders the spring rolls, X and Y and Z. He's one of our good customers. So if something bad happens, like we should probably address that because he's a VIP or whatever. I think that data has not yet made it into the operations portion of a lot of restaurants. And so in the next 2 years or even less, I think that that's going to become a huge, huge portion of it, is this level of tech-enabled hospitality, which we are very, very big believers of. And then the other thing that is a trend that we are very big believers in is this idea of We believe that AI is going to have a larger role to play in back of house than front of house, at least in the immediate term. And this idea that people are going to have agents or tools like some of the things that we're building right now and releasing in the next month, which will do the work that a person could do themselves, but just doesn't have the time to do. And so that's the other trend where we think that restaurant operators are going to get a lot more help in terms of running a really profitable business.
I was, as you were talking about the first tip there, I was looking backwards. I was like, I know I have this book and I couldn't find it back there, but I found it. So this goes back in time before all this tech stuff, but where's my, so Hug Your Customers. Jack Mitchell tells the story of like tailors, right? Who really know their customers well. You know, people who make clothes, right? So know your great customers, know your top 100 customers, know what they like. Invite them back in. And if you were to ask, and you guys probably do this in some of your surveys and whatnot, the restaurant operator, do you know your top 25 customers? Do you know your top 100 customers? Do you have a relationship with them? Because you're right, the tech now, you could, and some restaurants do this. You can have the profile, they come in, they sit down, and now when the server comes to the table, it can be like, hey, Bryan, thanks for coming back. Do you want that margarita again? Because that's pretty simple. Really, the tech is there, but can you implement that? Do you know the people as they check in? They've made the reservation, they're an open table, or they've used your little platform to gain a seat, or they put the phone number in. But people aren't doing anything with it. You're right, it's the same thing. Is this your first time again? Yeah, man, I've been here a lot. Like, yeah. What do you mean? I had you last time. Like, yeah. I remember you. So like, remember me is so much value to that anyway. But so this book talks about that, and I haven't read it for years, but I always think about that. Knowing who your top customers are and having that relationship is a big deal. But one thing, we'll switch gears. Another thing in the report talks about funding, right? Dollars. Some people look for loans and capital and other resources to grow. But your report indicates that as a challenge. So what are some opportunities in that space?
Yeah, you know, for the longest time, banks didn't like betting on restaurants.
Yeah.
And the challenge is also that restaurants, it was a ton of work to get a loan, not only from the bank themselves, but also from the paperwork, from kind of shopping it around and finding a good rate, and then remembering to pay back that rate. I think one of the things that is really interesting right now is you're seeing points of sale like SpotOn have baked in capital. And I think the thing that I really, really like about that is it is entirely a meritocracy, right? Like, we can look at your business, we can see how y'all done, we can give you a super fair and equitable and really, really empowering rate. And especially for a business that's growing, you know, maybe you need that new walk-in, or maybe you want to add that extra location, whatever it might be. I think the technology aspect of unlocking capital, which has historically been really difficult, is now as simple as, like, you just go into a dashboard and you say, yep, I'm eligible for $50,000. I'd like to take the $50,000. And then it just automatically, as every transaction goes through, it just deducts. And making restaurants focus on running a good restaurant and not the 100 other things around it, like securing capital, I think is probably one of the better advancements in the last, call it, 5 or 10 years. We expect to see it to continue to get even better.
Okay. All right. So that's on me. I didn't read deep enough to realize. So you guys, I guess, because like you're saying, you have the data in there. So part of your business has become, okay, let's extend credit to this clientele because we know how their business is running. And of course, I'm sure you have a relationship with a bank and does all this other stuff in the background. But is that the quick summary?
That's it. That's exactly right. I mean, I've heard stories that in like the 60s and 70s, like someone would come into their local community bank, and I'm trying to open a donut shop, and they would come in with a box of donuts and say, hey, I made this and I'm a good person. I'm got good standing in the community. And, it was very much a relationship thing. But as a point of sale, like, we have all the transaction data. Like, we can look at, especially if you're an existing business, we can look at the folks in your area. We can look at how you've done historically. We can pull that data and we can make really, really precise bets. And because we have data that allow us to de-risk it, we can give typically rates that are much better than that person who's kind of licking their finger and saying, yeah, that's a good donut, like 18%, you know?
Good. Exactly. That makes tons of sense. Yeah, that data is backing up that decision. All right. I love it. Let's go to some kind of what I call bonus questions, for lack of a better word, getting some info on you, and then we'll wrap up. So in your life, in your business, could be at any point in your career, but what's a great piece of advice you've had?
Probably my favorite piece of advice is just the importance of staying humble. And my wife has a saying that I like so much, which is, if you work hard and stay humble, the world is kind of in front of you. And we say that to our kids all the time. And so, no matter how good our product is, no matter what's going on, like we always stay hungry. And I think that's something that is advice anyone can use.
Absolutely. Let's stay in that quote realm. Is there another quote, a favorite quote that you love, or a saying that you love?
I think my favorite quote right now is that in a world of abundance, attention is a scarcity. And the idea is that there's just so much information coming at people right now that being present, being able to go deep is just such a rare thing.
Yeah, 100%. So much out there. Let's talk about books, right? Do you have a book you're reading now, something on the night table? Do you have some top recommendations?
Yeah, of course. So the book that I read last year that I loved the most is the one that I'm sure everyone here has probably already either heard about or talked about. I read Unreasonable Hospitality a couple times now. Just absolutely love it. The book that I'm reading right now, though, is called The 5 Types of Wealth. And it goes off in your mind like a stick of dynamite. Just has you reevaluate all the life choices you've made, which I really, really appreciate.
That makes me nervous.
No, it's great. It's great.
So, all right. So 5 types of wealth. Okay. I haven't heard that one. So let me, I'm going to write that down. Unreasonable Hospitality absolutely keeps coming up. So people, if you haven't read that, read that. It comes highly recommended. All right. So we talked about trends. What about a mistake? Maybe something you've learned over time. You're like, oh man, I don't want to do that again. Life lesson. What do you think?
When I think about the mistakes, it's typically in not following my instincts in terms of speed to action. Very rarely am I upset that I was too fast to act, and very often I'm like, I knew that was the right choice we should make, or we knew that we had to promote that person or whatever. And so mine would be like effectively moving faster. That's probably the mistake that I think about a lot. It's just as you get more senior, you got to move faster.
Yeah, we all and we all have this reluctancy to make decisions. Sometimes it's like, let me just wait. It'll like maybe something else will happen and it will get solved for me instead of reacting to that gut. You know what you want to do a lot of times. Like sometimes you just got to go do it. All right, so let's kind of finish with something that maybe not too many folks know about you. What do you think?
So the thing that folks probably don't know about me is there's a game called 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. And I spent almost every Saturday of my childhood with my dad at the movies. And so I am pretty darn good at that game. I love that game.
Well, how many degrees are you from Mr. Bacon? Any have you gotten closer?
I mean, given that I've never been in a movie, I'm probably still far away, but I wonder if Kevin Bacon is starting to become more difficult now that he's in fewer movies.
That's funny. Yeah, classic. Hey, listen, he's a legend. He's a legend. So, all right, as we close, hit him with where to find the report, your socials, your websites, parting thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, if you go to any of our socials, so we've got Instagram at SpotOn, and we've got LinkedIn. Obviously, you can go to SpotOn.com. One of the things that we're constantly trying to do is give out little nuggets of information so that people can run a better business, whether they're using SpotOn or not. We want the industry to succeed.
Excellent. All right. So, folks, Bryan Solar of SpotOn, you can find them on the web at spoton.com for more great restaurant marketing, operations, service people, and tech. Stay tuned to us here at runningrestaurants.com. In the meantime, please do a favor, right? Like it, subscribe to it, review us. All that stuff helps spread the word. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Bryan.
Thank you.